Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to be continuing reading our book al-Ajwbat al-Jaliyah fil al-Ahkam al-Hanbaliya, or the clear answer in Hanbali Rulings by Shaykh Musa bin Issa al-Qaddoomi rahimahullah. Let us begin. This is going to be lesson 32, where we will be discussing the prayer of the traveler and the ruling of combining prayers. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna bima yanfa'una wa zidna ilman wa naf'an ya Rabbil Alameen. We are on page 91 of the Sheikh Khalid Shah translation. If you have it and you're following along. Before we start reading the book, we will look at a section from Sharh of Daleel, al-Talib, where this section is not reflected in the book that we're reading, al-Ajubah. This is going to be just a brief introduction regarding the prayer of the traveler. So, the shortening of the prayers, referring to a 4-cycle prayer, so not a 2-cycle or 3-cycle prayer. In other words, we're talking about al-Dhuhr and al-Asr and al-Isha. Shortening this 4-cycle prayer is preferred for the one who intends to travel. It's preferred than praying the 4-cycle prayer in its complete form, meaning the 4 rak'ah. It, however, will not be disliked to pray it in the complete 4-cycle format. Now, this travel would have to be a permissible kind of travel. Permissible travel would include different things, such as a wajib or obligatory travel, such as al-Hajj, al-Jihad, and paying a debt. It would also include sunnah travels like visiting relatives, and it would also include generally permissible travel, such as for business. And this travel should also be going to a specific destination, meaning you shouldn't just be wandering around without the final destination. It's not a condition that one makes the intention that they say, I'm traveling to X destination, but as we said, it just means that this should be an actual travel to a place, not an aimless wandering. Now we're going to talk about the technical definition of the distance of travel. So one must travel the distance of 16 farsakhs, approximately. And this would be by land or by sea, and we would say today even by air. Now the farsakh is obviously an old unit of measure, and the fiqh books tell us how to calculate it. But the one thing just to take take notice of now is that the farsakh, like other traditional units of measure, are approximate. They're not exactly defined. So just like we say the mud is the 2 handfuls of something, likewise the farsakh, we will see it goes back to still an approximate measurement. So some of these measures, we can even talk about them existing in a type of a range. So to quickly explain here, the farsakh is equivalent to 3 Hashimi miles. A Hashimi mile is composed of 12,000 feet, and that is equal to 6,000 dira'ah, or arm's length. And when we say feet, we literally mean like the human foot. Likewise, the dira'ah, the arm's length, the human's arm's length. So you can see that's the reason why sometimes we talk about these old measurements in a type of a range, because there wasn't an exact measurement, but we would always be referring to, in the urf, what would be customarily accepted as a size. So, we could find maybe extreme arm lengths, but we're trying to look at what is kind of the normal arm length. So basically, if we have what we consider the dira'ah, or the length of the arm, and we're kind of talking about the forearm here, from like the elbow to the hand. Based on the explanation I just gave, we can do a mathematical calculation, x being the length of the dira'ah, by 6,000, by 3, by 16, and then dividing this by 100,000. This will give us our distance. If we are putting this, for example, in centimeters, so this calculation that I've set up is according to centimeters. So if you put in the dira'ah by centimeter, you're going to get the distance of the 16 farsakh in kilometer. I hope that's clear. And this can be even shortened to x, meaning the length of the dira'ah in centimeters, times 2.88, and you will get the distance of 16 farsakh in kilometers. So in case this has bored you, I'm sorry, but the point here is that we can estimate the dira'ah, the arm's length, being between 46.2 and 55 centimeters, and this is based on some research that I've personally done, and I've heard some scholars mention this type of something similar in this range, but there has been actual research on what this historically this length is. But once again, here we're giving it as a range. So if we accept that as the dira'ah, 46.2 to 55 centimeters, the 16 farsakh is coming to 133 to 158.4 kilometers. And this would be in miles, 82.64 to 98.43 miles. Now, I have seen different mentions of the 16 farsakh, and some of them are as low as like 77 kilometers. Even, in fact, many of them are going like some range between 77 and 90. And Allah knows best, but I think if we look at let's say if we calculate this backwards, we take the 77 to 90 kilometers and we calculate backwards, you will render the dira'ah, or the arm's length, a bit small. So I think that this 133 to 158.4 kilometers is quite a safe estimate, and Allah knows best. So in case you've become bored or lost, the point is that one has to travel this distance, the 16 farsakh, which we've calculated to 133 to 158.4 kilometers, to be considered a traveler, and hence be able to shorten the prayers. With regards to how we measure the 16 farsakh, we should be leaving the built or constructed buildings of a village or town. This might sound a bit strange, but yes, if you think in the past, there would have been many kind of like tents around villages, and if you travel, for example, if you visit places maybe in Africa, or if you're from Africa, you've probably seen that it's not uncommon to have tents set up at the edge of the city. So you are going to be leaving these built kind of permanent buildings, whatever they're actually built out of, could be concrete block or wood, etc. When you pass these buildings, you are considered outside of the city. This is now what we're reading in Sharh of Daleel by a-Taghlabi. He does mention that in the case that you pass these buildings and then there are some kind of destroyed buildings, and then again you're coming upon built buildings, you would still consider that within the city or town. I would just add to this, I have heard our contemporary scholars say something different, and I think if you apply their rationale, it makes sense. But we now have some huge cities, and you can even have what we would consider cities in cities. So there is some room at looking at going to the urf, and the urf, I think in our context, would be technical definitions of where a certain city ends. As I said, in some of these big cities, you literally have smaller cities. They're actually a different, government administrated entity. You have borders defining where places start and end. Likewise, you will find in many cities that you could pass through some kind of like city gate. So I remember, the city that I previously lived in, we would always, on the way to the airport, be going past a kind of a military or police checkpoint, and there's some kind of thing over the road, and this is like the border of the town, and the airport was outside of there. So this can go back to urf somehow, but I think with our modern cities, things are a bit different than how they are explained here, and Allah knows best. If you still have doubts, please consult your local scholars, which is always the best opinion for these type of urf issues. Jazakum Allahu khairan. And then there is a final point that if one intends to shorten the prayer, and then he comes back before completing the distance of shortening. So for whatever reason, he's coming back, he does not need to repeat the prayer. This is because it is based on the intention of traveling a certain distance, not the actual completion of traveling that distance. Now, there are a few scenarios where the one who is a traveler would stop shortening the prayers and would be praying the prayer in the complete form. So the 4-cycle prayer would no longer be shortened to 2, but would be prayed as the full 4. There are many of these, but we're just highlighting a few that are mentioned by a-Taghlabi, and these are maybe the more common ones. So number 1, you go somewhere and then you intend to stay there indefinitely. In this case, you would then cease to be a traveler and will be praying the prayer in its complete form. Or if you travel somewhere and you plan to stay there more than 4 days. So not indefinitely, but more than 4 days. And this means more than the time of 20 prayers. So anytime you're traveling and you will be staying for longer than that duration, then you will be completing the prayers in the full form. Then there's the scenario that if you're a traveler and then you stay somewhere to do something, you have something to do, and you think that to finish doing this thing, it can't be completed in less than the 4 days, the same 4 days, or as we've also explained them as 20 prayers, then in this case you would also complete the prayer. Now we're going to differentiate this with a case where someone is a traveler and then stops somewhere to do something, and he does not have the intention to stay there beyond 4 days, but he does not know how long it's going to take him to complete this task. So we said in the previous scenario, he may not know exactly how long, but he knows it will be more than 4 days. He's sure it will be more than 4 days. Let's see, your car breaks down, there's no spare part in this place, they have to order the spare part, they're saying it's going to take 7 to 10 days to get here. So with high certainty you're not going in under 4 days. Now this is different. Now the scenario we're talking about, you are stuck somewhere to do something, but you don't know how long it's going to take. In this case, you don't have to stop shortening the prayer. Likewise, if one is imprisoned oppressively or wrongly, or if he gets stuck due to rain, sickness, snow, or cold, and it says in a-Daleel, even if he stays more than 2 years, he does not have to stop shortening the prayer, because this is something that was not planned and happened to him when he was a traveler. So he intended to travel, he did not intend to stay, and then he gets stuck for one of these reasons. I'm kind of going on a lot about this because there is this famous opinion that is mentioned in the book Fiqh Sunnah, where the author mentions some of these reports of the Sahaba where they were in places for long periods of time and they continued to shorten the prayer, and he uses this as the evidence that according to his own understanding, that there is no time limit where the dispensation to shorten the prayer would end, i.e. the 4 days or 20 prayers that we've previously mentioned. And there are some famous stories. I believe there is an athar, a tradition of Ibn Umar, who was stuck in Azerbaijan for 2 years, if I remember correctly. But from our perspective, as what we've just mentioned here, we would look at those cases and put them under this type of an exception. Those people, they did not plan to stay at that place more than the 4 days or 20 prayers, but for some reason they got stuck there. This is our position, and I think it's important to differentiate this because this is a bit of a shadh position. Shadh meaning kind of unusual or aberrant position that is not mentioned in the four madhahab, but because of this book has become a popular position, and we should refrain from that position, and we should not be fooled. You know, the people who look at this, their thinking is a bit of the literalists, so just they see something and they follow it. We have our scholars which have looked at all these issues and they have clarified these are special cases, so let us follow as what the madhab has clarified, and this is in line with the four madhahib, and Allah knows best. So that was all about shortening the prayer, and as I said, our book does not discuss shortening the prayer. Once again, shorten the prayer from 4 rak'ah to 2 rak'ah. Now we are returning to what the book actually says with regards to joining two prayers together. So you have two different prayers. They could even be shortened prayers or in their full cycles, but they are going to be joined together. The two will be prayed in the time of one. The author, rahimahullah, nafallahu bihi wa bi ulumihi wa ulumi mashayikhana fi ad-darain ameen, he says, number 68, is it allowed to join two prayers? And he replies, it's permissible for a traveler to join and shorten the Dhuhr and Asr prayers, and to join and shorten the Isha and Maghrib prayers in the time of either prayer. Joining prayers is permissible or permitted for a resident sick person if he will experience hardship, one suckling a baby due to excessive najasa, or one incapable of tahara for every prayer. The joining of Maghrib and Isha is permitted even if he prays in his own home, with the condition there is snow, sleet, strong and cold wind, and rain that will wet the clothes. It is wajib that there must exist hardship in all of these. The best thing is to join the prayers when it is most convenient, whether it be during the first salat's time or the second. So now we can say there are 8 situations where one can combine the two prayers together. The first, as we've already mentioned, would be in a permissible travel. And we have discussed and defined what the travel means. So by doing that, as we said, is not disliked, we will be combining either between the Dhuhr and Asr prayers in the time of one of them, or between the two Ishas, meaning al-Maghrib and al-Isha, in the time of one of them. It should be noted that this combining is not conditioned by there being any type of difficulty. As soon as one is a permissible traveler, he has this right. And please also note this fine point. We said shortening the prayer. So shortening from 4 to 2 is preferred. However, the combining is neither disliked or liked. It's just a permissible thing. So preferred to shorten, optional to combine. واضح? Inshallah. So the second scenario is for the one who is a resident and sick. He may also combine the prayers if by not combining them, he faces difficulty. So here we have the condition of hardship. Third scenario is for the one breastfeeding, yani the woman who's breastfeeding, if she faces difficulty of there being a lot of najasa. When we say difficulty of a lot of najasa, a-Taghlabi clarifies this is the difficulty in purifying it for every salah. So there has to be difficulty, and the difficulty is defined as difficulty in doing the purification of this najasa for every salah. The fourth would be the person who is in a constant state of being impure. This would include, for example, the woman who is having bleeding beyond the time of the haid, and other people similar to her case. The fifth scenario, the one who is unable to perform tahara or purification with water or tayammum for every salah. This might sound like a bit of a unusual or rare circumstance, but you can imagine different circumstances where this might apply. The sixth would be for the one who is incapable at knowing the times of the prayer, such as a blind person. Of course, this would be a blind person that, for example, they're maybe outside of the city, they can't hear the adhan. Once again, probably we're looking at rare type of situations, but it's still something that you can imagine could happen. The seventh scenario is the person who has an excuse, meaning an excuse to abandon the Jum'ah or communal prayer, such as having fear upon himself or his property. And the eighth, which I think they could somehow just be combined with the seventh here, is the person who is working and they cannot abandon that work for the Friday or communal prayer. And we've already discussed these kind of scenarios in the last lesson. Now we're going to be talking about this specific scenario combining the two Isha, which means the Maghrib and Isha. In case you don't know, you can call also the Maghrib prayer al-Isha, and oftentimes in the fiqh books you see them described as the two Ishas. So it is permissible to combine these two prayers both in the house or in the masjid due to, for example, snow or cold or some type of icy precipitation, mud, and a strong cold wind. So the wind needs to be both strong and cold. However, a dark night is not one of the reasons that one can pray or combine the two prayers in the house or in the masjid. And finally, if there is rain that makes clothes wet and one finds difficulty in this. And we are looking here at difficulty, talking about difficulty in a general context, so it's not that, the difficulty of every single individual is considered. Meaning that there could be people that they find a small amount of rain difficult. for different reasons. But we're talking overall, generally, the whole group of those praying should generally not find it difficult. I mean, we should say they should find it difficult to then have the excuse to combine the prayers together. And Allah knows best. If we go back to the text of al-Ajubah, he mentions that the best thing is to join the prayers when it is most convenient, whether it be during the first prayer's time or the second. And this is correct, but there is something, I have the suspicion it was maybe missed in the manuscript. I strongly feel like it was missed in the manuscript and not left out by the author, but Allah knows best. But if we go to like Daleel, a-Talib and other fiqh books, we will usually find something like after this, what he's just said here, there will be a short sentence or a short addition, فَإِنْ إِسْتَوِيَّ فَتَأْخِيرُهُ أَفْضَلُ. So if they are the same, meaning that praying the two together in the time of the first prayer or the second prayer is the same, there's no reason that one is preferred from the other, then delaying the prayer is superior. And some of our shuyukh have explained this ruling in that, you know, when you are advancing the prayer, you are completely taking the second prayer like out of its time. So it's somehow like more preferred or more safer, or maybe better to say like more natural, that you delay the first prayer, because then you're in a situation where already the time of both prayers has entered. It's kind of like more natural, something that's closer to the normal scenario. But as we said, both are permissible. You shouldn't have any doubt if you want to advance the second prayer, but we're only talking about what would be preferred, and Allah knows best. Now we're going to quickly discuss about the two ways of combining the prayer, meaning you will be advancing the second prayer to the time of the first prayer, or you will be delaying the first prayer to the time of the second prayer. And not to confuse things too much, but the two modalities that we've just described have their own conditions. The conditions are overlapping, but as we will see, one has more conditions. So if you're combining taqdeeman, or you're advancing the second prayer to the time of the first prayer, you have 5 conditions. The first being the order. So for example, you're advancing al-Asr to the time of al-Dhuhr, you have to pray al-Dhuhr before al-Asr. Second, the intention, meaning the intention to combine. This has to be at the time of the ihram, takbir al-ihram, in the first prayer. There is no condition that you need to repeat this intention when doing the ihram of the second prayer. And I hope you've memorized these terminologies, but if you need refresher, please go back to the arkan, or the pillars of the prayer. Next condition is that you don't separate between them, meaning as far as the time between the two prayers. So that short time is defined as something like praying the nafila prayer, or the time to make the ikama, or the time to make a light wudu, a kind of a quick wudu. So if you're going beyond this time, you are then going beyond what is commonly understood as combining. You've now separated. Fourth, and once again we're talking about the conditions, the 5 conditions to advance the second prayer to the time of the first prayer, is that the excuse of why you are combining the prayers must be present at the beginning or the opening of each prayer. And the fifth condition is that the excuse must continue to the time of completing the second prayer. So whatever your excuse is, be it traveling or the rain, etc. However, regarding the rain, there is one exception. That would be that in the case that you have made that intention due to rain, for combining the prayers at the time of the first prayer, and then it stopped and didn't come back. So you can even still be in the first prayer. Rain was there, then it stopped. If you discover there is mud on the ground, this does not invalidate the combining. However, if there is no mud on the ground, it would then invalidate it, because there is no continuation of the excuse, because you can see how the rain and the mud are obviously mixed as excuses. Now we will talk about the combining the two prayers, ta'khiran, or meaning delaying the first prayer to the time of the second prayer. So this has only 3 conditions. Remember, the first, advancing, has 5. Now delaying has only 3. The first is the order, as we've already discussed. The second is having the intention to combine in the time of the first prayer. So you're not actually starting the prayer of the first prayer in the time of the first prayer, but you should have that intention to combine during that time of the first prayer, and you should have or make that intention before the time of the first prayer becomes so short that there would not be time to perform the prayer. So an example would again be like you want to combine the Dhuhr and the Asr prayer by delaying Dhuhr to the time of Al-Asr. So you would be making the intention to combine them in the time of the Dhuhr prayer, but it would be in that space of time of the Dhuhr prayer before the time is becoming so short that you wouldn't have time to perform the Dhuhr prayer. So like, let's say maybe if you were going to pray the Dhuhr quickly, maybe you can perform it in like 5 minutes, for example. So if you have less than the 5 minutes left in the time of Dhuhr before the time of Asr enters, you cannot intend in this time. But if you are before that time, you can intend. And finally, the third condition is that the excuse should remain from the time of the first prayer until the entering of time of the second prayer. So if the excuse is present in the time of the first prayer and then ceases before the time of the second prayer begins, you may not combine the prayers. And just a few quick clarifications. So that excuse for combining the prayers, it's not necessary that then in the time of the second prayer it is continuing for that whole time. It just needs to be present, as we said, at the beginning of the time, the start of the second prayer. It is not a condition that when you're combining the two prayers that you have, for example, the same imam. The two combined prayers can be led by different imams. Likewise, one can also pray behind someone who is not combining the prayers. So if you're combining, you can pray behind an imam who's not combining. It is also permissible to pray one of the prayers alone and the other in a group. So it's not a condition that both be alone or both be in a group. Likewise, the person who is combining the prayers may be an imam leading people who are not combining prayers. So this has gone a bit longer than I planned, but I feel what is in al-Ajwaba is a bit light, because I think the reality is that this is a type of fiqh that people are using quite frequently, especially in our modern world. It can be, I think, much more common now to be a traveler than sometime in the past. So that's why we went into some of these in a bit more detail, and I think that also al-Ajwaba, it's very light on shortening the prayers. So inshallah, all this has been of benefit to you and your family. As always, please don't forget us and our scholars and all of the Muslims in your dua. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.